Our guest today is an award-winning journalist, news anchor, and producer. She anchored CNN's morning show Starting Point and was the co-anchor of American Morning. She now runs her own production company that's dedicated to highlighting issues like race, class, and poverty. Soledad O'Brien, thank you so much for joining me on our brand new season of the Suburban Women Problem.
Happy 2022. Wow, right? Can you believe it?
Your latest documentary is an HBO series called Black and Missing. My husband and I have very much enjoyed it. Maybe enjoy is not the right word, but we have watched it and we have learned something, which is more than can be said for a lot of shows that we watch. So, could you please tell us a little more about that series and why it's such an important issue?
We decided to do Black and Missing when we started seeing some of the statistics around the number of just people of color who are missing. And what you realize pretty quickly is there are some systemic issues that really help shape who is searched for and who's not. And, who does the media care about reporting on and who do they not care about? And so it was an interesting opportunity to take a look at an issue. And the two women who run the Black and Missing Foundation are sisters-in-law, and they're just powerhouses. One's in PR and one works in law enforcement. And because I think of their really specific backgrounds, they help families of people of color who are missing really navigate not just the horrible thing, like I can't even imagine, but then also navigating like media live shots and press conferences and how do you get the police to care about your case, et cetera, et cetera. And so we wanted to tell their story while also talking about them. But, we always use that as a prism to get into some of the other cases that are relevant examples of sort of how these cases go and where some of the stumbling blocks are, sometimes intentional and sometimes not intentional.
So, the fact that the news media tends not to focus on missing Black and Indigenous women points to something deeper. What do you think the news media needs to improve to kind of bridge this gap?
I think there's a couple of things at play. And the biggest one is probably that all people don't really talk or think about or embrace and understand their own bias. In our documentary, we have a news executive who at the time was the head of NBC News, who talks about how race played no role whatsoever in the fact that everybody was chasing the story of a young Natalie Holloway, I covered that story, horrible story, but a similar story at the same time of a young Black woman who went missing under equally mysterious and bizarre circumstances. Almost the same exact case, just couldn't get traction, right? So at some point you have to say, so why is that? And I think
Right.
the news media has a really, maybe like most people, we just have this sense of like, we don't want to believe we're biased. We want to believe that we see everybody equally. But at the end of the day, I do think there is some unconscious bias. And then I think there's a whole hell of a lot of like super duper conscious bias. And I know because this will be my 34th year or something in news media, which is one of the reasons I'm such a proponent of diversity, because I feel like you need people around you who can say, actually, you're kind of missing this story because you are not me. And I have insight that maybe you don't have on this, but you might have insight in another way. So a big portion of it is, I think, the people who run kind of the assignment desk of who's going to cover what today. It's not just the most over the top crazy stories. All these missing people stories, most of them have some horrifically bizarre angle to them. A lot of them. It really is. I think this young woman is attractive. I think it's a terrible thing that her parents, who remind me of me and my family, are missing this child. And they don't feel that way when they see someone of color often. For the law enforcement piece of it, though, I think there's a lot in terms of how you think about missing people. In the doc, it was very clear, and I hadn't realized this before. The minute you categorize somebody as a runaway, you no longer can put out an Amber Alert for them. So think of all the people who are, categorized as, well, maybe they ran away. And again, if you identify with someone, you might say, oh my gosh, they would never run away. I know this family. It's a good family. They're just like my family. Their kids look just like my kids. They would never have run away. But if it's someone who you don't think is particularly valuable, or you don't identify with, or you don't know much about their community, you might say, yeah, they probably ran away. And so all of those things add up to a public that often is not very informed about people of color who go missing. And information, I think, often leads to, or lack of information leads to a lack of interest when those folks go missing.
When I was watching Black and Missing, so much of it is how it's framed, and how those stories are told, because you can identify with anyone if someone wants you to identify with them. If they choose those elements and choose to highlight them, then it's very possible. The bias in telling the story and just even presenting facts, because you choose which facts to present. And that was really evident.
And you choose which picture. Anybody who has a teenaged daughter or son has a kid who's doing this on camera in some capacity, sometimes as a joke, sometimes with, right? Like, so is that the photo that runs? Or is it their picture right before their, their confirmation in church? Like, obviously there's a choice in how you pick what's going to run. And it could be what you have access to, but sometimes even that is, well, if you don't know a family well, or you're not going to say, no, this picture is just not appropriate. We're trying to help you find somebody. It should be a better shot of their face.
Yeah, because people might not know.
I think you're right about framing. In journalism, we have this opportunity to say, here's how we're going to frame them this way, or are we going to frame them this way? And I think sometimes journalists pretend that framing is not a thing and that everybody just blindly goes in and, and tells stories. A lot of my framing is around people of color. So if someone asks me to pitch them 10 stories, I guarantee you 70% will be like, well, I know this person, I know this is an interesting story. They'll be about people of color because my framing it's a lot of the work that I do. For other people, it'll be something else. If you ask my kids, my boys would pitch sports stories, right? Because everything in their prism is around sports. So we act as if somehow framing is not a thing, when framing is hugely important in how you give people information and how you think about what elements are most interesting and important in the story.
So let me ask you, critical race theory became a major political issue in 2021. And unfortunately, the uproar doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. All over the country, school districts have even started book banning. I can't believe I'm saying that in 2022. Do you think the strategy is working, though?
What does work and what is really brilliant about the strategy, and I think is that people understand that it doesn't have to be about the issue. It just has to be something that gets people mad. And if you're hoping in an election or hoping to get a lot of people angry about a thing, critical race theory is one of those issues. I think the bigger problem has really been, again, journalists don't really understand it. So they often will take the framing of the people whose goal is to really undermine the whole conversation. Their bias is that in public schools, the majority of parents are white, and that's just not true, right? That overall, in public schools in America, the majority of parents are of color. The kids are of color. And often I think it's a surprise to journalists to read that, to hear that, because they don't understand that. I thought Chuck Todd had an interesting interview the other day with Nicole Hannah-Jones, right? Which was where she sort of said, listen to your framing. You say a lot of parents, feel like they're being guilted and blamed, but a Black parent or a parent of color is what he said. And she's like, actually, right, again, more parents of color, more kids of color. So, but the way you shaped it was just one parent, of color versus parents as a whole. This default is that they're white parents. A parent is a white parent. A suburban mom is a white suburban mom. An evangelical is a white evangelical, when Black evangelicals and white evangelicals are very, very different in their thinking and their voting. Like, he clearly believes that there are all these white parents who feel like their kids are being made guilty. I'm not even going to get into the point that that's not even the case, and that critical race theory isn't even taught in any of these schools anyway. So I think it's been a genius strategy because it uses race as a wedge. And I think there are a lot of parents who feel like, yeah, this makes me mad and I'm angry. And any way in which you can spur people on to be a little more mad and a little angry, especially around an issue that's complex and that they don't really understand, and that the journalists don't even understand.
Have there been any other times or issues in your career where the right wing has used fear mongering to secure votes that come to mind?
Oh yeah, I think frequently. I mean, I think the Willie Horton ad, right? I was around for that. This idea that this Black man is going to get out of jail and kill people, and I think the caravan. I mean, the media is just an embarrassment. Because I'm not talking about right-wing media. I'm talking about the New York Times. Isn't it kind of weird that people only talk about the caravan around the midterm elections, like consistently only?
And it's even a joke, but it still happens, even when people joke about it.
Right. It almost is like an SNL skit, right? Like, it's completely farcical. And yet it just happens consistently. The media, they just cannot help themselves to kind of take the bait. Republicans have been very, very good actually in gaming the system and playing the refs. It plays to people's, deepest fears. And I think a lot of people have a lot of fears around race. This guy could move into your neighborhood. Do you really want to have tacos on every freaking street corner? I don't think we do.
I think confronting it head on and not doing like the both sides thing, because you can't both sides when one side lies. I mean, I can't have a meaningful conversation if someone cannot face the truth.
Yeah, and I think that's been a big challenge, right? If you don't call out the lying, and if you don't say this thing is not true, and you start having you have a debate around something, and then the second to last paragraph says, well, this is not really happening.
I just don't think people take the time to get to know and have those conversations. And if they did, I truly believe that it would change their minds if they had a personal experience. We have to start having the conversation in our country. And I think giving us these talking points is a place to have these conversations about our past. And that way we can move forward, whether it's moving forward from January 6th or moving forward from 1776. We have to be able to have conversations.
And a fact-based conversation.
It's not about emotion. Right? It's just truth. So we do like to end with a little rapid fire questions. We'll try not to make it too hard. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
Aside from your own docuseries, of course, what is your go-to binge watch on HBO?
That's such a great question. My go-to binge watch across the board has been Criminal Minds, which is all about serial killers. And my husband's like, how is this relaxing for you? I've seen the entire series, which I think runs 17 seasons.
Yeah, a long time.
I've seen it. I'm on my 5th rewatching of it. I have really enjoyed HBO for everything. So I don't know that I binge a lot. I just love watching docs, and I literally will watch absolutely everything that comes out. And then, but in my comfort moments, like when I need whatever the equivalent of mashed potatoes and gravy is for TV, it's Criminal Minds.
Well, last month when I was at your holiday party, I had a chance to peek inside your incredible new apartment, and you have amazing art. And I'm still thinking about it. What is your favorite piece?
We pick art just by what I like. So I wouldn't say I don't have valuable, there's nothing in there that's like, oh my God, this is the Picasso's over there. And we have not anything like that. Literally, I just decided that I wanted to have things that surround me that make me happy, that made me feel like I like being in my space. And in the last probably 10 years, that started getting important to me. Like, I want to be able to sit at my table, and if maybe there's a plant that needs to be there or flowers, or I want it to feel good to be in a space. And so the art that's hanging on the wall, which is like where all the bedrooms are, we have a little gallery, and that was done by a middle school art teacher.
I met her.
Jessica, who's amazing, who came because I told her we have a gallery of all her work. So that one is amazing. I love knowing an artist. Mm-hmm. I have another painting of a big bull that's in our living room, and the husband of a dear friend did that. I love that one. I love the size of it. We have some pictures that I painted. They're really not paintings. They're more like art from Haiti, where they use, the sequins. In Haiti, they have a lot of sequined art. And I don't know the artist, but it's really just beautiful. The textures are amazing. So I just love the story behind it. So it's never been for me about I picked this up, in this fantastically expensive piece of art. It's just, I love it. There is one piece that everyone in my family hates. It's called Crying Baby. It's a giant picture, maybe 5 feet by 5 feet, of just a baby's face, and it's crying. And my husband's like, it's too scary. It needs to be in the back part of that. So that's one of my favorites, because everybody hates Crying Baby, but I personally love it. So I'm always trying to make sure Crying Baby gets her spot.
I know that you ride. You have a lot of pictures on Twitter and Instagram of riding. What is it about horses that brings you joy? I
really just love it as a sport. I love that horses are very intuitive, animals generally, right? And in some ways, small children too. They don't tolerate fools. If you're mean to them, you can't fake it. There's not a lot of bullshit involved with horses or any, people, if you're afraid a horse will know it. Doesn't mean they'll treat you badly, but they'll know. You can't really be fake around a horse.
So as we go into 2022, what are you most excited about?
Oh gosh, so many things. This year, I think my resolutions are all around, trying to make sure I'm doing the things that I want to do. Over the past couple of years, I think this is a very typical mom resolution where you feel like you're just on this bus of constantly saying yes and doing stuff and you're just tired. And I really want to, I want to say yes to the things I want to say yes to, and a very nice no to the things I want to say no to. Just be like every single thing that's in my calendar was something I really wanted to do. Every meeting, every lunch, everything I'm doing is something that I chose to put on my calendar. That's kind of my goal for 2022.
Well, I feel honored that the Suburban Women Problem made the cut. You are an incredibly generous and gracious person with your time, and I really appreciate that. And
It's
I
my pleasure.
this
Thank you for having me.
when we were at your holiday party in December, I just met so many people whose lives you had touched and people that you have been so generous to. You clearly want to bring others up as you move up, and that's something we talk about on the pod as well, of just the importance of that. And I love it. Thank you so very much for joining us today. It's just been such a privilege, and for joining us for our first episode of the second
I'm very
season. We
honored.
really
Thank you for
appreciate it.
having me. Appreciate it.